Even though 334 million people live in the United States, almost half of it is still empty. In today's video, we'll show you 9 empty states and why nobody lives there. Sounds untrue, right? Well, there's only one way to find out, so watch this video until the end. Number 1. Maine. Maine is so far north that the people who live here might as well be Indian. Friendly maple syrup-loving cousins surround it, and the landscape is almost the same, with a mysterious pine forest, glacial lakes, the rocky coast, and of course, moose. So why is this beautiful state mostly empty with only 1.385 million people living there? The answer is simple: the climate. Winter in the rest of Maine is similar to winter in Game of Thrones. It is brutal and never-ending. As such, not much industry exists in the vast majority of the state, which is 89% untouched forest. Number 2. Montana. In the east of Montana, you can see farms for miles. In the west, you can see mountains and glaciers that reach the sky. As a cowboy, Montana is a dream come true. That's why it might surprise you that only 1.12 million people live in the state, which is 147,000 square miles. Montana is bigger than Japan, but it only has 1/100th of Japan's population. Why is this big, beautiful state the third least densely populated, with only 7.5 people per square mile? You'll be surprised to learn that most Americans don't want to be cowboys. Millennials and Gen Z want to live near busy cities with good-paying jobs and city amenities. But that's not what Montana has to offer. Billings, the state capital, has just under 100,000 people, and some towns are so far away from the nearest Walmart that it takes 2 or 3 hours to get there. Number 3. Rhode Island. The only thing Rhode Island and Montana have in common is their population. While Montana is huge, landlocked, and full of mountains and wide open spaces, Rhode Island, on the other hand, is tiny, coastal, and flat. In fact, it's the smallest state, covering only 134 square miles. That's why less than 1.1 million people live there. It's so darn small. There's no room for more people. If you count the number of people living in each square mile, Rhode Island is the second most crowded state. The state is mostly made up of cities, and the Providence metro area is one of them. Even though it's getting less busy, the cost of living is now about the same as New York, and the state has almost everything that makes New York a better place to live. Number 4. Delaware. This state is almost twice as big as Rhode Island, but still very small. It's only 1,948 square miles, which is about the same size as the city of Anchorage. There are more people living in Rhode Island because of the medium-sized city of Providence. The only big city in Delaware is Wilmington, which has 70,000 people. Delaware is home to over 2 million businesses, so why doesn't it have big cities? Wilmington would have been a good choice, but Philadelphia got it instead. Tourism-based economies on the beach have never needed big towns. Also, Delaware has a way for businesses to do business in other states without having to pay state income tax. So those businesses don't really create jobs in Delaware. But retirees don't need jobs and love the beach, so many of them go there. There are now 1.02 million people living there, which is 1.4% more than a year ago. Number 5. South Dakota. South Dakota is home to Wall Drug, one of the most well-known cultural places in the United States. What's going on here? After seeing 200 ads about Mount Rushmore, I finally got to see it. The hype around Wall Drug isn't worth the hype, but those marketing tricks are hard to forget. But the fact that Wall Drug is the only interesting thing for miles around says a lot about South Dakota. It's very cold, very big, and very far away from everything else. That's why it has only 999,000 people living in it, making it the 5th smallest state in terms of population and population density. Number 6. North Dakota. Think of every problem plaguing South Dakota. Now multiply them by 10. Add some oil and boom, You've got North Dakota, home to the darkest, coldest winters in the lower 48, hot and humid summers, and terrible flash flooding during the spring. South Dakota is pretty, has better weather and tax rules, and a more diverse economy, so it's easy to see why less than 780,000 people live in this lonely state. Number 7. Alaska. Alaska is the big daddy of states, literally. It's so big that if you cut it in half, either half would still be by far the largest state. But even though it covers 665,000 square miles, most of it is inaccessible and isolated. Not only is it a 40-hour, 2,200-mile drive through remote Canada to the nearest non-Alaskan U.S. city, but even towns within Alaska are hundreds of miles apart, with many of the biggest cities being inaccessible by car. In fact, there are barely 16,000 miles of road in the entire state. That's 5,000 miles less than Connecticut, and you could fit 120 Connecticut in Alaska. Yeah, they ain't kidding when they call it the last frontier, a land where grizzlies, moose, and wolves walk around town, and where vast, untamed forests, coasts, mountains, and tundra combine to make up an area larger than Mongolia. Number 8. Vermont. Vermont is known for being the home of Bernie Sanders. Still, when most people think of the state, they probably picture cozy farmhouses tucked away among the fall colors, where people wake up to the sound of birds singing and water running, and then put Vermont maple syrup on their breakfast. They would be right, even though Vermont is the 6th smallest state by area. Vermont is a true rural haven, with only 38.9% of its residents living in cities. This, along with the fact that Vermont's mountainous and forested landscape isn't good for building big cities, is the main reason why it's so lightly populated, with only 647,000 people living there. Number 9. Wyoming. Unless you've been living under a rock, you've probably heard that nearly no one lives in Wyoming. But nearly no one isn't anyone, because Wyoming is the second least densely populated state, with just 5.9 people per square mile. Living in this windy, elevated landscape isn't for the faint-hearted, especially since there are no real cities.
The capital of Wyoming, and Cheyenne is a charming and has a median household income of $68,000.
Wyoming might not have an economy. The state or feds employ 25% of the workforce, making it one of the safest states to buy a home. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to this channel. We'd love to hear from you in the comments section, so do well to let us know which of these states you'd want to live in. Thanks for watching.